Now, I was kidding you about this whole stamp thing earlier, but now I'm not going to kid anymore. I'm going to be very serious. Stand over here. That's good. Now, I need all the kids down front. Can you kids come down, sit down here in these chairs? Is that all right? Come on. How about you? Want to come sit down here, or are you afraid? Come on. It's all right. You can sit here. All the kids sit in front. That's great. No. 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 Okay, come on. Here we are. Over here. Now, when I first wrote the first Owney book, I was in touch with a lot of people at the post office, and I was able to discover that Owney was approved to be a stamp by the committee that approves people to do this, but that the process of allowing, making him into an actual stamp was long and complicated. So whenever I get a chance to come to Washington or talk to people like you, I say, I hope some of you will be in touch, and Alice can tell you who that would be. And by the way, Frank Shear works for the postal system too. He would know that as well. And my publisher made up some Owney stamps. Who would like an Owney stamp? One? Two? Three. So we're trying to work it out so that Owney becomes a stamp. Who would be more suitable to become a stamp than this dog who did incredible things? And this is what draws me to Owney, is the incredible things that he did. And I'm here to make a confession to you. I understand that a person isn't supposed to make personal confessions to large groups of people. But I have written, as Allison has said, 2 books about Owney. I learned more about Owney after the first book than I learned doing the research to write the book in the first place, which allows me, after 4 years of traveling around the country, talking to groups like you and reading to kids and all that sort of thing, enough to write a second book. And I have a feeling that in my files I have enough material that I could write yet a third book. And people used to say when the first book came out, people always ask these questions. I never know why they do that. But they say, well, are you going to write a second book? And I didn't know what to answer. But finally I realized, hi kids, come on over, sit down front here. Come on over here. If there was to be another book, it would be very difficult to write. There's some chairs over here, folks. If you come around behind the camera, that would be wonderful. Owney went around the world in 1895. He started from Seattle, Washington, and he went across the Pacific. We know that he met the Emperor of Japan. We know that he had a Japanese passport. And then we know that he traveled around in this area. And then we don't know anything about what happened until he got to New York, and he was greeted by a large crowd, very excited about all of that. There's newspaper reports about him doing that. So what's really amazing, oh, look at that, Family Day, Owney Family Day, right on the book. That's pretty good, huh? Frank, I'm sorry you can't take a picture of that. It goes away.
I got the idea.
You get the idea. He's good at this. The thing that I want to tell you before I go any further is how astounded I am. And I'm really fortunate to be up here to be able to tell all of you about this and put this idea in these kids' heads. This dog lived an amazing life. We're talking about a real dog who lives a real life. This is not some screenwriter's dream in Los Angeles. This is the real thing. The dog lived in the 1890s, and he traveled all over the United States on mail trains from Albany, New York, all across the country. Furthest west was Cloverdale, California. I grew up in Los Angeles. Until I came to this book, I didn't know where Cloverdale was. Well, it's north of what I call the bridge. The Californians like to do that. The bridge, of course, is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and Cloverdale's north of that somewhere. So, and by the way, all the red dots aren't here because the tag list, the expanded tag list, says that he had 1,017 tags. Well, there's not 1,017 dots here, so we know that he went to a lot of other places as well. And so the dog lives a real life, and he does this by himself. Now think about that. There isn't some rail clerk in Albany who goes with him, who sees that he's fed, who sees that he gets on the right train and all these kind of things. The dog does it by himself. And I find that amazing, and I have come to learn that this is the difference between his life and the world that he lived in and our life and the world we live in. The dog lived in a more generous, easier world than we do. And I have a feeling that we'd all be a lot happier if we lived in his world than in this world. And I'm not supposed to say stuff like that. Sorry. Now, the important part and the impetus for all this is that he rode on the mail wagons from the Albany post office to the Albany train station, which at that time was the same distance as you walking out the door here and going over to the Washington train station, very close. But one day, he jumped on the train. Now, this is for the kids. Someday, you will have an opportunity to jump off the wagon onto the train and change your life. If there is a message here, this is the message. Look for the opportunity to jump on the train and change your life for the better, like Owney did, and you'll have great adventures. So think about that. So now, getting to the notion of a wider traveling, you've seen the map of the cross-country situation, so you know he went all over the country. Now, not many of you were alive in 1890s. Anybody have a birthday in the 1890s? Raise your hand. No, okay. In the 1890s, in Chicago, and this is a map of downtown Chicago, Owney sitting in the middle of it, there were 6 train stations. Now, I'm probably a couple of years older than most of you, and when I was a child growing up in Los Angeles, my mother would put she and I on a train at Union Station in Los Angeles, which was built immediately after the Second World War, and we would take the Santa Fe train to Chicago, and we would get off at this station here, give our bags to the red cap, take a taxi over to this station here, and go on to Connecticut. You could not go across the country, east or west, or north or south, without changing trains in Chicago. Now that means that the dog had to do that too. And the dog had to do that by himself. Wow. Isn't that amazing? Yes. So there are 6 train stations, and they will figure importantly in his story. Now, she's doing a really good job because she's illustrating what I'm talking about. I don't have to do this. So, Allison, let's go back to page 1 here, and let's walk these folks through the book. Now, by the way, the book has 6 postcards in here that are illustrations from the book, or a real postcard from the Dearborn Station, which is still in Chicago. Don't touch the microphone, please. Still in Chicago. And also a souvenir card from the World Columbian Exposition. Can somebody tell me why it was called the World Columbian Exposition?